Hello and welcome to kind of new format of European UAP talks because this talk is more closely focused on one particular case. The theme of this video is the UFO crash retrieval in Magenta, Italy. And before I will introduce my guest today, I would like to firstly say a few things about this case as the story of how I first heard about it, the UFO crash retrieval in Magenta, is actually quite frustrating in a way, and I guess you will soon understand why. Because a couple of years ago, when David Grusch came out as the UFO whistleblower, I was listening to an interview with him, and it was conducted with Ross Coulthard, that long interview where they talk about many different topics. As I was listening, at one point, David Grusch says in that interview to Ross Coulthard that there is 90-year cover-up of the UFO or UAP team. And to that, Ross Coulthard says 90 years, and David Grusch explains to him that, and I'm quoting here, in 1933, there was the first recovery of the UFO in Europe. They recovered a partially intact vehicle. And of course, in this, he was mentioning the Magenta UFO crash retrieval, and this was the very first moment I actually have heard about it. And it felt honestly a bit weird to hear it from a guy from USA, a whistleblower, because I was thinking, shouldn't I have heard this before from some Czech, German, Italian, or just plainly European researcher? But actually, I hear it from somebody who's over the Atlantic Ocean. So that felt a bit odd, and I often think about it. There's so much talk about strong cases in the USA and, of course, about the Roswell UFO crash. Even here in Europe, we talk about it so much, but it's a bit a shame that we don't talk so much about Magenta, which is a crucial piece, as I would think. So often in the media or even in when there are official research to UFOs, they often skip the past. They maybe start like the Arrow office, they start from the year 2000 and go on and forget the older cases. But it's important to go back to that older cases. So maybe the best topic to start with might be the Magenta UFO crash retrieval. So we are really starting from the beginning. And to talk about it today, I'm here with professional journalist Sabrina Pieragostini, who is in the recent weeks managed to talk to a descendant of a direct witness of Magenta case. And we will, of course, talk more about this. And as I mentioned, Sabrina is a professional journalist. For almost 30 years, she worked for the leading private television group in Italy. She has held various roles, reaching the position of editor-in-chief. And for many years, both out of passion and as part of her profession, she has explored borderline topics such as non-human intelligences, UFOs or UAPs, extradimensional phenomena, life after death, and mysterious archaeology. In this field, she created the blog Extremamente, which became a TV segment for 8 years. And she has written 4 books. Her written pieces also got multiple high ranking awards at international events. And today, Sabrina continues her journalistic career as a freelancer and as an event moderator. I would like to now welcome Sabrina and ask, how are you doing today?
Hello, Jan. Everything is okay? Thank you for inviting me, of course.
Perfect. And before I will introduce some important facts, would you like to say something to what I mentioned that what do you think about the role of this case in the history? How important is it, and how does it relate to everything before I jump to some facts?
It's important because it's the first UFO event we know, and it happened in Europe, not in the USA, but in Europe. And you said no one knew about it before David Grusch spoke in front of the congressional hearing. Indeed, in Italy, we knew about it because in 2001, two researchers, Roberto Pinotti and Alfredo Lissoni, wrote a book about the Magenta incident. But the weird thing, the strange thing is that no one believed them. Also ufologists thought that it was an hoax, a not true story. And so no one believed the reality of this crash until David Grusch spoke in front of the Congress.
Exactly, and I mean, here in Czech Republic, pretty much nobody knows about it, so it's a shame. When I sometimes speak about the UFO team, I try to mention it, but thanks to you, I learned already some new informations, and I will try to say some basic facts or the basic things we know, and from that, then we can go on and learn more about this case, talk more about it. I'm using a couple of sources, and of course, as I mentioned, we also exchanged few emails, so already some informations are things to you, Sabrina. And of course, the first thing we need to mention is that this UFO crash has happened under the regime of Benito Mussolini. And so it has a very specific connotations, and of course, how could respectively, how could not the journalist look into it? And what is interesting to mention is that there are multiple UFO sightings that the regime at that time has recorded, beginning in the spring of 1933, and in the years that followed, there were numerous unidentified aircraft sighted over Italy, especially over the northern part of Italy, for instance, over Milan. And we know these things thanks to telegrams and phonograms found in the historical archives. And so let's now move our attention to Magenta. It happened in the year 1933. The exact day or hour are not certain. However, there is one internal government message from 13th June 1933 in which they disguise this accident as just an ordinary meteor. So the most probable date of when it happened is either 12th June or the 13th June early morning. Where exactly it happened is also not totally certain, but the approximate place location is Magenta. Many people actually witnessed it, but the regime at that time said that it was just a ball of lightning that hit people who were on a bicycle, which sounds a bit odd, but that's what the news were telling that time. And the Magenta UFO was reported to take inside a hangar at an aircraft factory in Virgate. And there are official documents mentioning that this UFO case, that it actually happened, that the retrieval happened. And there's especially mentioned a group called RS-33. But there are also rumors that while this UFO crash happened, that there were some NHI beings, ET bodies, but for those, as far as I know, there are no official documents. And as you have told me, Sabrina, we have two second-hand witnesses. The Podesta, mayor of Arona at the time, that told his family about all that this happened and all these animal things that happened in a craft that crashed down, and about the pilots who were as tall as children, according to his great-grandson. Then also we have a second-hand witness called Alfonso Carminati, who was a soldier at the time, and he had learned from his commander that a flying fortress without wings or engines had fallen and believed it to be a German prototype. This is a story that he told his grandson in the 60s. There are also some, let's say, talks that Pope was involved and then that he shared the secret to Americans after the fall of fascism, and also that the object was later recovered by the Americans in the April 1945 after the liberation of northern Italy. So these are kind of some of the main points, but did I mention everything or is there something else important to mention?
No, it's okay. It sounds good.
So let's try to get into some of the details.
Yes.
So what would you say are the biggest, most factual things that we can really count on? What is the, what are there some documents or what do you take the things that could be proven as like kind of 100%?
I think the most important things are the documents from the fascist era, because they were checked, they were examined by a court expert, well-known, a good person, and he checked the ink, and he checked the paper, and he found out they were authentic, they were original from the 30s of the last century. So the documents are original, and it's very important, of course. And according to Pinotti, the anonymous who sent the documents to some newspapers and magazine in 1996 was the one of the children of Galeazzo Ciano, important personality in the Mussolini government. He was his son-in-law and also a minister of the foreign affairs. So he was a very important personality inside the Mussolini government. And according to Pinotti, his son sent the documents because some of them have written the name Galeazzo Ciano. So probably a family member found the documents at home and then sent them to newspapers and magazines. So the documents are very important, but I think that also the revelation made by David Grusch are important too, because he is a very credible source. He was a high rank officer of American intelligence, so he must know what happened. And in interviews and also during the congressional hearings in 2023, Grusch said that the Magenta UFO crash really happened, whatever the object was, of course.
Maybe we should a bit more clear up the secret cabinet RS-33, that there are some documents that are
Yes.
out there that mention these things. And I just can say that I remember one of the document that it was like making protocols of what to do if something else happened in the future. That first, that they should kind of course, secure the place, that they should capture the people who saw it, again, spread some disinformation about it to cover it. So what do we know about these documents and about this group, to kind of say more broadly?
So in these documents, we can see how this information proceeds. It anticipated the CIA, it anticipated the US government documents about UFOs witnesses, because they suggest, for example, say that it was just a meteor, it was just a planet, it was just something natural, an astronomical effects, and so on. So it's right, disinformation before the disinformation started in the 50s. About the RS-33 cabinet, we have some other documents, not from this anonymous source, but they came from a very powerful Italian politician named Giulio Andreotti. He was a senator, and some months before he died, he had 6 letters from his personal historical archives delivered to Pinotti. These letters were written by the fascist intelligence, and they quoted the RS-33 cabinet inside the Mount Sorate. Mount Sorate is a mount not too far from Rome, and during the war, the Italian secret services hid themselves in this mount, in tunnels and rooms dug underground. And also RS-33 cabinet was there as an intelligence office. So we have the second source about this committee, this office really existed.
So, if I understand correctly, it is some kind of like secret service of Italy that was super secret, that it was not officially known, and it started at some year and then it also disappeared some year, and we don't know everything about it.
Exactly. We know just some names of the members of this cabinet because of Roberto Pinotti and Alfredo Lissoni did a great job of inquiry, and we have to give them the right credit for that. And we know that members of this cabinet were academics and professors, for example, biologists, for example, astronomers, and also a man very interesting, Filippo Bottazzi. He was the most important Italian expert of all living beings at that age. He was a physiologist and the father of the Italian biochemistry. And is interesting because if the object, if the UFO was just a machine, maybe only engineers would have been involved to study it. No, we have also biologists, also biochemists, chemists, and also physiologists. So maybe this object was really something out of this world. Maybe really also a crew was inside this object, and so they needed people like biologists, something similar to understand what they were.
Hmm. And actually, I have here one question from a viewer, and this one is from Eduardo. And he told me, please ask Sabrina if anyone has ever done independent research on Italo Balbo, Guglielmo, Marconi, and the other members of the alleged secret cabinet RS-33 to validate the claims.
Of course, we are talking about people dead many years ago, and no descendants, no son, grandson talk about this topic. Just the grandson of Guglielmo Marconi said something interesting. His name is Guglielmo Giovannelli Marconi. He is a professor and also a prince. And he said something about his grandfather twice. First, in an interview with an Italian magazine, and more recently, speaking to Jess Michaels, the American podcaster. And Guglielmo Giovannelli Marconi said, my grandfather headed a special group for studying UFOs.
Hmm. All right. I mentioned one of the second-hand witness, and I can mention it again. Alfonso Carminati, and that he had learned from his commander that a flying fortress without wings or engines had fallen and believed it to be a German prototype. So, do we know something about these connections with the German and, of course, the Nazis there? Was it connected in some way, or are there more sources saying that there was some connections then to maybe Nazi Germany of the world and the World War II and so on?
First of all, I interviewed this witness. He's a neurologist, a well-known neurologist in Italy. And he told me when he was a boy during the 60s, he was watching on TV an Apollo mission. And he said, hey, Grandpa, the Americans are the best in space technology. And his grandpa replied, are you sure? I think that Germans were better than Americans because when I was young, before the war, I knew that a fortress without wings, without engines, crashed in northern Italy. And I think it was a German prototype. So I think that many other people thought so about the Magenta UFO. We know that German engineers worked a lot to build new weapons, new aircrafts. and we found out the projects after the end of the war. But there are no proofs that those aircrafts have ever flew. So maybe they are just ideas taken from strange things fallen from the skies. We can also think that. Probably, that's my personal opinion, it was something more than a prototype because of, I repeat, the presence of biologists, of expert of living beings, expert in also astronomy. It could be a bit strange if that object was just a very high-tech object from Germany.
Hmm. And to this, I can also say that there are also rumors, as I mentioned, about the Vatican being involved or the Pope being involved, and there are different stories about it. That either that the Pope tried to warn the Americans about it, that he wouldn't want the Nazi Germany to take over this technology, and so on. But what do we really know about this? If there is some Vatican involvement, or if it's just rumors?
You know, everything relating to Vatican is a secret. You can know anything about what they know, what they hid, and so on. We can say that again, David Grusch told about this involvement. He said that Pius the 12th sent the information to the U.S. government, and so the American army took possession of the wreckage after the end of the war. We don't know if in 45, 46, 47, because the Americans stayed in Italy a long time after the war,
Hmm.
at least 3 or 4 years to control the situation, of course. And we know, and Pinotti wrote that in his books, we know that Pius the 12th was the state secretary of Pius the 11th. And Pope Pius XI was a close friend of Marconi. So maybe they talked about this strange object. We don't know, but it's possible because they were friends.
Hmm. All right. And to mention the most interesting and most important right now, the news, because you have interviewed a descendant of a direct witness of something that happened there at the 1933. And so would you present that? Who did you meet and what did he tell you?
Yes. Really, to be true, I didn't find him, but he found me. So I met this man because he needed help. He was writing a book, not about UFOs, a completely different topic, and he asked me just for help. And last October, he wrote me an email. He knew I was going to go to Baveno for the Soul Foundation Symposium.
Yeah.
And one of the main topics of the symposium was the Magenta UFO crash. And so he wrote me, "Hi Sabrina, I never told you that one person of my family was an eyewitness of the Magenta incident. But I will explain you better personally when we meet together the next time." So I was, of course, surprised. I was astonished, and I am curious. And I immediately called him, and I wanted all the details about the stories. And so he did. Then I tried to convince him to record this story on a camera because he didn't want. Of course, you know, there is stigma. He didn't want to be in public. He didn't want people think he is crazy and so on. Then I convinced him, but one condition he asked me. I don't want that my face and my name are known. And So it's okay for me. And that's why in the interview I call him Peter, a nickname. And you can see just his neck, his foot, his back, and not his face. But he is not anonymous. He is a person I personally know very well. So that's important. What Peter told me. So his uncle, I mean the brother of his grandfather, named Giuseppe, had a terrible adventure in 1943. This man lived close to Magenta, in a small town close to Magenta. And one day in 1943, he was an artisan. He was in a small forest picking wood for his job. Suddenly, he heard a very big noise as trees crashed. And he was curious too, and he went in search of the source of this noise. When he moved a bush, he was face to face to a very strange creature, a small one, with very big, enormous black eyes, and he said, without a soul. And he was in panic. He ran away and closed himself at his place. Only his sister-in-law, the wife of his brother, was able to enter the room, and she found Giuseppe in bed with high temperature, with the skin completely red, a burnt skin, and he was shocked. He told her all the story, and he said, I saw the devil. And everyone in Peter's family thought that Uncle Giuseppe saw the devil. At the time, no one talked about UFOs or aliens. Italy was a very Catholic country. So if you see something strange, maybe with a gray, brown, or reddish skin, you think it's a demoniac presence, it's a demoniac being. So Giuseppe did. Then the interesting details is about another situation after some days or some weeks. Peters doesn't remember it, but Giuseppe went to the pub in his town and told the story in this bar. No one, of course, believed him, but one man said, oh, in those days, I saw something strange too, because I was navigating on the Ticino River, close to Magenta, and I saw a strange silver object falling from the sky. So, a confirmation of the Giuseppe's story. The story was told by the sister-in-law, the grandmother of Peter, and all in the family knew this story because they told from son to son, of course, father to son. And we can ask us, Peter's story is true or not, of course. I think it's true, it's genuine, because he is a good person. He has great values. He is a volunteer in association to help poor people. He doesn't want to be famous. He doesn't want money. I think this is a real family memory. Was Giuseppe a liar? I think no, again, because he was a very serious man. He didn't like to joke. He was a lonely guy, no friends, and he was really shocked. He changed his behavior after that encounter. He became more open to people, less lonely as he was before. And then he has also these damage, these physical effects on his skin. And now we know that this is consistent with what often happens during a close encounter, but we know now, of course, not at the time. So I think the story is a real family secret, and I think Giuseppe was really a eyewitness. I don't know what he saw, of course, a devil, something different, but in my opinion, it isn't a fantasy.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And there are a couple of points to take out from this. So there was not really mention of how the craft looks like before, or it was just some light in the sky, right? And what he mentioned is a silver object and any shape or just silver something.
So Giuseppe didn't see anything, just the creature. He didn't find the wreckage. The other man just said, I saw a strange silvery object.
Hmm.
He didn't tell disc shape, cylindrical shape, nothing. Because it was just a surprise when he was working on the Ticino River, and it was 2 seconds and nothing more. It was difficult to focalize, to have a focus on something so fast.
Hmm. Of course. And also, of course, the other point is that when he saw that being, that after that he experienced some physical problems, that he had a high temperature, problems with the skin, and some people might consider that it might be a radiation burn or something like that, right? So, and it is also something that sometimes is connected to some other UFO cases. So that's also quite interesting, right?
Yes, he didn't see the object, but probably he was close to it because he found the creature just moving a bush, just moving a tree. So maybe he was really close to the object, and maybe the radiation hit him and did the damage to his skin. We can't really understand what happened 1 centuries ago, of
Yeah.
course. But it's interesting the story because it's compelling with what we know now, of course, and also we can think maybe he saw a gray alien, but we don't know. He never told about the color of the skin. Maybe because when he said, I saw the devil, everyone at the time could understand how a devil looks like, maybe.
Hmm.
And if you look at the devil representation in the last century, he has always a gray or a reddish or a brown skin,
Hmm.
always dark skin. So
Hmm.
maybe so a creature with a dark skin, small, especially with these big, big eyes, without anything, without a soul, so empty. I think without the normal human form. So for him, it wasn't human; it was a demoniac entity.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that part that where he's saying that without a soul, it is very interesting, right? That what struck him was the eyes, and that also that kind of sense of no soul. It is, I guess he just saw him for a few seconds and then ran away, and just a few things got caught in his head. I would understand.
Of course, he was in panic. Maybe just 1 second, because the second he was ran away. It was a really horrible situation for him. He was real terrified.
Maybe as a last important question, we say Magenta UFO crash, but I understand it is also not precisely known where it fell down, right? Because also I was in Baveno and some people tried to go to Magenta, and when they did, they kind of there's no real place to focus on. There are many like rural areas around, and hard to say where it precisely happened. Is that right?
Yes, of course. Many things Many things have changed in 1 century, of course. But Peter said me exactly the point, the venue of this encounter, and it's a small forest between a quarter of Magenta, Ponte Nuovo, and another town where Peter's family lived. And it's important, it's the same place that Pinotti mentioned as a hypothesis in his book. So it's exactly the same point. Now the forest is smaller than 1 century ago, but the place is that.
Do you think anything else we should mention, or I should ask you about this case before we wrap it up?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I think that some other documents are present inside other archives we don't know nothing about, because it's difficult that something so strange, something so important um, didn't remain inside the government records. We should go deeper. We should inquire more, because maybe now in the national Italian archives we could find something more, and maybe also in the Vatican archives. But who can enter that archives? It's a good question.
So if we should see some upcoming revelations, it could be maybe again from some descendants of witnesses, or maybe from these documents that would come out somehow. But I understand it's hard to get to them, right?
Yes, of course. But of
Mm.
course, we can also ask all the people who live in the Magenta area, and people whose families lived there for many, many generations. If someone knows something, please come forward and tell us what your family knows about this strange incident.
So, I mean, I will also link to this video, your YouTube channel, where you cover the news and the cases. And of course, there you can also find the original witness speaking, and with the camera, of course, he's shown from behind, but anyway, you can see him speaking, and there are also English subtitles and dubbing, so you can understand what he's saying and to get a feel of what he's talking. So this is kind of pretty much everything. Is there anything you would like to say as a last thing? As far as I understand, you are pretty much 100% persuaded that something really happened there, that is a factual case. So can we end on this note? What would you say to that?
Yes, I think something really happened almost 1 century ago in northern Italy. Something crashed from the sky. We don't know what it was, but people saw it, people experimented it, and also the indirect witnesses, as Pietro Negri, Podesta, mayor of Verona, as Alfonso Carminati, they were witnesses of something strange that really happened in Italy, in Europe, 1 century ago. So it's important to continue to investigate and to search deeper the truth.
That's right. So thank you so much for joining me, and thank you viewers for watching. And if you have any comments and questions to this, please write them down. I'm sure that maybe some other time we could join again with Sabrina, because she's not just covering the UFO Magenta, but she's covered many stories. So maybe we could again sometime meet. But again, thank you, Sabrina, so much for joining me. It was
Thank
an
you.
honor to have you here. And to the viewers, have a wonderful rest of the day.